Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're looking at something pretty interesting. It's ERC-7683, and it has the potential to be a real game changer in the Ethereum world. I've gotten the research and articles here that you sent over, so let's jump right in and try to break down what this is all about and why everyone listening should care.
Yeah, so I think what's really fascinating about this ERC is that it's trying to solve like one of the biggest problems in DeFi today.
Yeah.
Which is basically making it easy to interact between different blockchains.
Yeah, because right now it's kind of like every country having a completely different postal system, right? You want to send a letter, it's like, what are all these different rules and processes I have to figure out? It's a real pain.
Yeah, exactly. It's super fragmented and complex. And so that's really where ERC-7683 comes in. I like to think of it kind of like a universal translator for cross-chain actions.
Okay, I like where this is going. But let's back up for a second. For those who might be new to the Ethereum world, can you just quickly explain what these ERC standards are and why they even matter?
Yeah, sure. So in simple terms, you can think of ERC standards like blueprints or sets of rules that developers can use when they're building applications on Ethereum. So like a really popular example is ERC-20, which is the standard for creating tokens. You know, these digital assets that represent things like cryptocurrencies or even loyalty points.
Yeah, so it's kind of like ERC-20 made it possible for all these different tokens to work together smoothly. I'm thinking like how USB ports let you connect all sorts of devices to your computer.
Exactly. That's a great analogy. And now with ERC-7683, we're trying to do something similar, but for actions that involve multiple blockchains.
Got it. So taking that travel analogy a little further, let's say I want to like move some tokens from Ethereum over to Arbitrum. How would that work in the world today? And then how would ERC-7683 come in and hopefully make things better?
Yeah, so right now you would probably have to use what's called a bridge, which is basically a platform that connects those two chains. But the problem is that each of these bridges, they kind of operate differently. It's almost like having to learn a new language every time you travel to a new country.
Yeah, that sounds like not a very fun vacation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So ERC-7683 is really aiming to simplify all of this by introducing this concept of cross-chain intents. So imagine you could just say, okay, I want to transfer like X amount of tokens to this chain over here, and the system would take care of the rest.
So it's kind of like ordering food delivery, right? I just tell the app what I want, where I want it delivered. They figure out all the logistics to get it to my door.
Yeah, that's a perfect analogy. You define like the what and then. Yeah. There's this whole network of specialized, what are called fillers. You can kind of think of them like those delivery drivers. And they figure out the most efficient and secure way to actually execute your intent across chains.
Okay, hold on. Fillers. That's a new term for me. So who are these fillers and what exactly are they doing in this whole system?
Sure. So basically fillers are entities that compete to fulfill your cross-chain intents. So they're incentivized to offer like the best prices and the fastest execution times to kind of win your business, so to speak.
Okay. So little healthy competition, that's always good for us users. But how can they possibly handle all the complexity of moving these assets between all these different chains? I mean, it just sounds like a logistical nightmare.
Yeah, that's where the whole standardization of ERC-7683 comes in. It basically defines a very clear and consistent way to express these intents, so it makes it easier for fillers to understand and then actually process them.
So I'm picturing like a universal shipping label that all the different delivery companies can understand, no matter like their own specific delivery method.
You got it. And this standardization doesn't just benefit the fillers. It also makes it way easier for developers to build applications that actually use ERC-7683. So it helps to create a much more interconnected and collaborative ecosystem.
Okay, this is starting to sound like a pretty big deal, but is this just like a theoretical concept right now, or are there actual real-world projects out there working with ERC-7683?
Yeah, it's definitely moving beyond just theory. In fact, this standard is a collaboration between some really big names in DeFi, including Across and Uniswap Labs.
Wow, that's impressive. Having those big names involved definitely gives it some credibility, makes me think that this could really gain some traction.
Yeah, and they've been working closely with what's called the CAKE Working Group. That stands for Chain Abstraction Key Elements, basically to make sure that ERC-7683 aligns with all the other broader efforts to try to improve cross-chain interoperability.
So it's not just about like solving one specific problem, but it's about fitting into this bigger picture of a more unified blockchain world.
Exactly. It's all connected.
All right. I'm ready to dig a little deeper now. Can you walk me through like how a cross-chain transaction would actually work, step by step under this ERC-7683? Let's get into the nitty-gritty.
All right, so let's say you want to swap some tokens. You want to move them from Ethereum over to Optimism. With ERC-7683, the first step would be you would sign what's called an off-chain message using your private key.
Okay, wait, off-chain. Why not just do everything on the blockchain like we usually do?
Yeah, that's a good question. So signing off-chain is actually a really clever way to kind of like improve the efficiency and keep those gas fees down. Basically, things only move on-chain later on in the process for that final settlement.
Ah, okay, so it's like we're sending a quick email just to confirm all the details before we send out like the official certified letter.
Yeah, exactly. It's a good way to think about it. So once you've signed that message outlining what you want to do, that message then gets broadcasted to the network of fillers that we were talking about earlier.
Right. So all these fillers receive my message. What happens next? Do they all just like jump on it at once?
Not really. It's more like a competitive bidding process. So each filler will review your order. They'll look at the token types, the destination chain that you want to use, the exchange rate that you're looking for, and they'll basically decide, okay, do we want to take on this order? Right. And if so, what kind of fees are we going to charge?
So it's in their best interest to offer, really good rates and fast execution to try to attract users like me.
Exactly. So that competition among fillers is really what drives down those prices and hopefully makes the whole experience a lot smoother.
Okay, I like that. So let's say a filler decides, okay, I want to take on this particular order. What happens next?
All right, so the chosen filler will then verify your signature and they'll lock up your tokens in escrow on the origin chain. So in this case, that would be on Ethereum, just to make sure everything is safe and sound.
Okay, so my tokens are basically in like a secure holding cell until the whole swap is completed.
You got it. And then this is where things get even more interesting. The order details, they get transmitted across chains to the destination chain. So in our example, that would be Optimism.
Okay, so the information about my swap, that's now over on Optimism. But how do we make sure that this transfer happens securely and that everything matches up on both sides?
So one of the really cool things about ERC-7683 is that it doesn't actually like mandate a specific verification method for this cross-chain transfer. So it allows for a lot of flexibility and innovation.
But wouldn't that make things more complicated? I mean, wouldn't it be easier if everyone just used the same method?
Yeah, you might think so. But different projects, they have different needs and they have different security requirements. So this flexibility basically lets them customize their solutions. Some might go with like a more centralized verification method because it's faster. And then others might prioritize decentralization because security is their top priority.
It's like having different transportation options, right? Sometimes I need a quick taxi, and sometimes a scenic train journey is more my style.
Exactly. It's all about using the right tool for the job. But regardless of the verification method that they use, the end goal is always the same. It's to make sure that those order details are transmitted securely and that the transaction settles correctly on both chains.
Okay, I'm following so far. So my order info, it's now on Optimism. What's the final step in this whole cross-chain dance?
All right, so then the filler, they step in again on the destination chain and they basically use that information that was sent over to execute the order. So they'll swap your tokens for the tokens that you want on Optimism.
So they're completing the swap on the other side.
Yeah.
Based on those instructions. That I provided way back at the beginning.
Yeah, exactly. And once that's done, then the cross-chain settlement process kicks in, which ensures that everything is balanced and reconciled on both the origin and destination chains.
So it's like a carefully choreographed handoff. My tokens are released from escrow on Ethereum, and I receive the equivalent tokens over on Optimism.
That's a great way to put it. And throughout this entire process, ERC-7683 is kind of like the conductor, making sure all those moving parts are working in harmony. Everything runs smoothly.
Okay, I'm starting to see the real potential here, but I want to shift gears for a second and talk about the real-world impact. We touched on NFT marketplaces earlier, but what other exciting applications could we see with ERC-7683?
Oh man, the possibilities are pretty huge. If ERC-7683 really catches on, it could completely change how we think about interacting with different blockchains. Imagine a world where moving your assets between chains is as easy as sending an email.
Yeah, that would definitely make my life easier. No more jumping through all those hoops and just to move tokens around.
Right. But it's not even just about the convenience factor. ERC-7683 could also unlock like a whole new wave of innovation in DeFi. We could see these really cool, truly cross-chain applications that take advantage of the best parts of all these different ecosystems. Like imagine decentralized exchanges that could pull liquidity from multiple chains at the same time.
Oh.
Or lending protocols where you could put up your assets as collateral on one chain and then borrow on a totally different chain.
Yeah. So it's not just about improving how we do things now, but it's about opening up these entirely new possibilities.
Exactly. It's like we're laying the groundwork for this more interconnected and efficient blockchain world.
It kind of sounds like we're talking about I don't know, like a blockchain internet almost, where all these different chains can communicate and interact with each other seamlessly.
Yeah. I think that's a pretty good analogy. It might not be that far off, actually.
Yep.
I think the key takeaway here is that ERC-7683 is about way more than just simplifying cross-chain transactions. It's really about creating this more unified and interoperable blockchain ecosystem.
Okay. I'm definitely sold on the potential. But, let's be realistic for a second. We've talked about adoption challenges. We've talked about security concerns. Are there any other potential downsides that we haven't really considered yet?
Yeah. I mean, one thing that comes to mind is that the flexibility that we've been talking about, that's built into ERC-7683.
Yeah.
It could lead to some fragmentation in terms of how it's actually implemented. So like if different projects, they decide to go with different verification methods or different settlement processes, that could undermine the whole goal of having a standard in the first place.
Yeah, it's like if every country decided to use a different electrical outlet, it kind of defeats the whole purpose of having a universal standard, right?
Exactly. So it's going to be really important for, the developer community to communicate clearly and really work together to strike that right balance between flexibility and consistency to make sure that ERC-7683 can truly live up to its potential.
Makes sense. So what can developers do to really help make sure that ERC-7683 is implemented, effectively and securely?
Well, I think first and foremost, they have to really prioritize security. I mean, this means rigorously auditing all their settlement contracts and really thoroughly testing their implementations. And then they should also be actively engaging with the community, sharing their knowledge, talking about best practices to really foster that collaborative approach.
So it's all about responsible development and working together to build a secure and interoperable future.
That's it. And by the way, for any listeners out there who are interested in really getting into the technical details of ERC-7683, I highly recommend checking out the actual proposal itself. It's publicly available, and it outlines all those specifications and really important considerations for implementation.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll definitely include a link to that in the show notes for everyone. Well, we've covered a lot of ground today, from ERC standards to, the intricacies of cross-chain intents, and then the potential impact of this whole ERC 7683. But before we wrap things up, I want to leave our listeners with something to think about.
Okay, how about this? What role do you want to play in shaping this emerging cross-chain future? Whether you're a developer, an investor, or just a curious user, there are so many opportunities out there to get involved and really contribute to this exciting evolution.
That is a great point. We're all part of this journey, and it's really up to all of us to shape the future of blockchain technology. So stay curious, keep learning, and let's build something amazing together.
It's been a pleasure exploring this with you.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into ERC 7683. We hope you found it insightful, and we can't wait to see what the future holds for this game-changing technology. Until next time, happy exploring.